So one of the things we would generally start off with is news of in the LA, oh well, not LA, sorry, in the Clojure ecosystem. So if anyone has anything interesting that they've come across to mention, worth mentioning.
I think since last time we open sourced a new thing called Lighthouse, which is it takes like it basically generates, it's how we generate all of our Kubernetes manifests. It combines together Eden in merging, is it just deep merge in Clojure, and so that's a new thing out there.
Yeah, I saw your announcement, but I haven't looked at it yet. The thing that I noticed was Chris Nürnberger's fast JSON and CSV, which looks really interesting. And the big win, of course, is getting rid of Jackson.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that
Johnny may be mute.
He made a new library called Chard. I think it's how it's like the extraction of that from the was it TechML data set or whatever, data frame, or so that it's usable just on its own. Yeah, it seems very interesting.
Anyone else?
There was a new, I've been using Portal since the last meetup. And
yes.
Chris, Chris, he just posted there's an Electron app. So people that use Portal inside of IntelliJ or VS Code or whatever, they can have, it embedded inside their editor, but Portal embedded inside their editor. But I use Vim, and so there's no way to embed it. But he has this Electron app that will, when it's running, it basically does the same thing. It's always on top, and you can easy to find, that kind of stuff. So I've been using it a little bit. It's pretty cool.
Not familiar enough with Electron, but is that something that will allow it to then run inside VS Code?
Electron's a standalone shell for apps, so you can basically run web apps inside Electron as a desktop app. So it already runs inside VS Code as an extension, which is how I use it all day long. And so I have just a Portal panel that's open inside VS Code, and that's where all my tapped data goes, including all my logging, because I have that set up to tap to Portal as well.
Cool.
All of my exciting news is about Biff, so it's just me playing around with Biff, but that's the topic of this meetup, so I'll just wait. But that is the exciting thing for me, is hopefully we'll find out here just that I was able to get something up in the cloud working well in a very short amount of time, so, which has not been my experience with Clojure because of my own situation, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, Nate, do you want to start with that? With Biff and see where we can go?
Yes, let me try again with the unmuting. Sure. Here, let me share. Oh, wow. Yes, Biff, make your ideas come to life. I have to say it's one of the better project websites. It's not too heavy. It's not too vague. I think every time I look at it, I'm amazed at how well everything's put together. So anyway, so Biff is a simple, easy, full stack web framework for Clojure. Launch new projects quickly without getting bogged down in complexity later. And we use XTDB, Htmx. Htmx is what I'm most interested in. I've done a little bit of dabbling with XTDB, but HTMX Biff was when was me learning about HTMX. I had not been familiar with it at all. So I'm curious as to how much that impacts the ability to make applications. Biff is under 2,000 lines of code, designed to be taken apart and modified so that it doesn't get in the way as your needs evolve. That's a very cool goal if it's achieved, if you can actually achieve it. I'd be interested in learning if anybody actually does actually is able to accomplish that. That's pretty cool. So let's see here. Before we do that, I want to just look at this. I'm always wary of curl pop to bash. What do we do here? Checks for Clojure, RL wrap, Java version, and then it runs a new project stuff. Okay. Okay, seems pretty harmless. Kind of cool that you can have your bootstrap be, because the CLJ takes depths on the command line. You can like pack it all into something like this. It's interesting that it uses this instead of CLJ new or depths new or whatever the current new is. All right, let's try this. Enter a name for project directory. Biff. Main namespace, com.example. Biff Meetup. Your project is ready. Run the following commands to get started. Task dev. All right. Tailwind. I never used Tailwind. Has anybody used Tailwind to great effect?
I have actually, thanks to Biff. I wouldn't say great effect in my case, but to some effect. To some effect, and I was pleased to when Biff. Well, actually, it was already established, but it seems to become even more established since Biff was introduced. And there are great websites that are not Clojure websites or Clojurescript, but all about how to do everything with Tailwind, and it seems popular. And actually, I kind of think it's elegant. I can find those links before this meetup is over. Post them.
Oh yeah, post them in the chat.
Yeah, it's what I'll do.
Oh, there it goes.
Looks like many projects need to be updated for Clojure 1.11.
Yeah,
because of the ads.
One thing about, I'm sorry, interrupting.
No, go ahead.
Okay. The one thing I was pleased to find out in Tailwind was, I guess it's probably the case with many CSS frameworks, but that it's very mature in terms of mobile first responsive design. So
like responsive stuff.
Yeah, and it looks very slick. So I do like slick looking websites. So yeah, so they have templates for Tailwind, and they are mobile first, and they work very well with sidebars and everything. And that was thrilling to me. One thing that I'm going to be trying to do is to he uses rum in Biff, and to come up with an HTML to rum converter, because there's an HTML to hiccup converter that works really well out there, but there's not one to rum that I know about. But if that can be come up with, then it will be very easy to take these templates and convert them to, if I understand things right, to convert them to ready to use rum templates that then would work perfectly with this. So if anybody has any thoughts about that, reach out to me.
Do you have, this is Tom, do you have any thoughts about the interaction between rum and HTMX? Are they two different things, or?
I think
I mean, I kind of know what
yeah.
rums is. I'm not too sure about what HTMX is.
I'm the wrong guy to answer this, to try and answer many things, but I think they're a little orthogonal, so that HTMX can certainly dish up whatever you want, and rum would be one of them. Well, rum would specify what it dishes up. Let's put it that way. But there, I should close my mouth. But yeah, rum is the I think the default template for God. I'm using probably the wrong words, but it's the default thing for Biff for specific reasons that I think he mentions. But one of them was that there's a security issue with Hiccup, which has to do with escaping strings, etc., which was apparently addressed in, but that was one. There was a reason why he chose rum, but he's probably the one to address that, not me. So.
Okay. This is the rum. This is the rum you speak of.
I wonder. Let me look here.
Client server library for HTML UI.
Yeah, that's it. Yep.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed it. It works for me. It's sort of the same as Hiccup. It's very similar.
Okay.
It's a compact version of yeah. I should not try and describe it, but it's
Cool.
it's just as efficient. It seems as Hiccup for me. And the only thing is I need I'm going to want something that converts HTML to rum. We're digressing,
Gotcha.
thanks to me. So I'll stop now.
No, I see. It's
Yeah.
to make it into the rum data.
Yeah, and that's just to save time, because you can find these templates that are beautiful, ready to go in things like Tailwind. And this is really going into something that many of you would not do. But yeah, you can just drop it in and just convert it, and then you're ready to go.
And use it. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and they have a HTML to Hiccup thing, and I've done that in the past.
Gotcha.
Anyway,
cool. All right. It says go to localhost 8080. So I'm going to go to localhost 8080. I will follow the instructions. It's a very Spartan app, but I assume that's okay. Email address. Stop one password. Thank you. Sign-in link was printed to the console. If you add an API key to mailer send, the link will be emailed to you instead. Huh, cool. There we go. Click on that. Log in. Signed in as Nate. Cool, we're in. Let me see. I think I saw. Oh yeah, here you go. And REPL server started. So let me get my editor going here. Let's see, BEP CDN, that's a good place to start. Okay, let's see, go back here. Let's get started. Oh, exception. Oh, it's an nREPL exception. Easily ignored. Oops. There we go. All right, Biff, a simple and easy web framework for Clojure. Biff is designed to make web development Clojure fast and easy without compromising on simplicity. It prioritizes small to medium-sized projects. It has two parts, a library and a template project. As much code is written as library code exposed under the Biff web namespace. It includes a lot of high-level helper functions for other libraries. Template projects contains framework code. Interesting. contains the framework code, the stuff that glues all the libraries together. When you start a Biff project, the template project code is copied directly into your project directory, and the library is added as a regular dependency. Some of Biff's most distinctive features. It's built on XTDB, the world's finest database. There it is. It has flexible data modeling, data log queries, and immutable history. You can use the file system for storage backend and dev, and switch to Postgres in production. Yeah, I think I saw that in the storage. Yes. Good old XTDB. Almost said Crux. Uses Htmx and Hyperscript. Oh, what's Hyperscript? Easy and approachable language designed for modern front-end development. It's like a very interesting. Okay, I assume we'll get back to that later. Htmx lets you create interactive real-time applications by sending HTML snippets from the server instead of using JavaScript, Clojure script, or React. It's ready to deploy. The template project comes with a script for provisioning an Ubuntu server. Wow. Including Git, push to deploy, HTTPS certificates, and Nginx configuration. Develop and prod. If you choose to enable this, you can develop your entire application without ever starting up a JVM on your local machine. Whenever you hit save, files get rsync to the server and evaluated. That's cool, I think. All right, other things it includes Rum and Tailwind, Jetty and Reddit, Mali, Buddy, okay, for web authentication, Chime for scheduling. A minimalist 15-line dependency injection framework, similar in spirit to component. Wow, I think it says a lot about Clojure that you can have a dependency injection framework in 15 lines. We use Biff over at The Sample, a relatively young 2-person business. It has about 13,000 lines of code. The Sample. Has anybody used The Sample?
I'm not. I'm gonna sound like a plant here. I'm not. I'm actually. When I found Biff, then I found The Sample 1.0, and I signed up for The Sample, and actually, I've started using it. It suggests newsletters, and you kind of say, yes, I like this one, I don't like that one, and then it finds more along those lines. And I've cool. Actually, it's crept into my inbox, and every day I'm like reading newsletters, which I wasn't really doing before then. The newsletter thing, but yeah. So I won't try to describe what it is, but it's it works, and it's my interface with it is through my inbox.
Okay.
And it kind of organically started happening there, and then he added, but related to Biff, he added a dash. Suddenly there was a login from my, they sent me an alert saying you can now look at your dash where you can see the newsletters that you've signed up for, and that was done in Biff. So and yeah, so if you want to see their example, that's what you would do. I mean, if you sign up for The Sample now, you'll get that dashboard. So.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think it's. I mean, it's like, this is not just a theoretical framework. This is actually a framework that's driven by an actual, he makes a business. I mean, that's, that's good. It's. I mean, it means it's informed by, not just wishes, but actual like reality. So it's really.
Yeah, the old buzzword was he's dog fooding his framework, which I never understood that, but what that exactly meant. But I think this may have
actually. Why would you want to eat dog food? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really. What does that mean? But I think this might have come organically out of. I don't know which came first, Biff or The Sample, but they seem to have co-evolved. I don't know.
Yes. Cool. All right. So we did this. We ran this bash. Chris will create a minimal CRUD app, which demonstrates most of Biff's features. Run task dev, which I did. Start the app. When you save a file, Biff will evaluate any changed Clojure files, regenerate static HTML and CSS, run the tests. You can connect your editor that's also REPL CLJ file, which you can use as a scratch space. Okay. I evaluate this. All right, well, we'll wait for that to come back while reading. When you're ready to deploy, see production. Well, we're not quite ready to deploy. Your new Biff project will look like this. We assume you selected com.sample example as your main namespace. Okay. So it looks like we got config. What's config look like? Give it a second. Ooh, wow, look at this. Oh, cool. Here's the example of how to switch over to using JDBC instead of the local topology, standalone topology. There's my secret for all of recording to remember. So I'll change that if I ever deploy this. Oh, here you go. Task is a shell script that contains project commands. Task dev starts the app locally, and task deploy pushes your most recent commit to the server. See README for a list of all the commands. Task dev, task clean, task deploy, task soft deploy. Okay, so deploy restarts the app, and then soft deploy, it does the values of all those change files. Nice. Task refresh, reloads the code, restarts the app. Log, tail the server's application logs, prod REPL, open SHL so you can connect to the server via nREPL. Awesome. And prod dev runs task log and prod REPL. In addition, whatever you save a file, it will be copied to the server and evaluated, after which HTML and CSS will be regenerated. I wonder what is task A. Oh no, it's a. I was guessing that it would be a Babashka file, but looks like it's bash, which is fine. Cool. Config.sh contains configuration for a task. Config.sh. Such as the project's main namespace, com example in this case, a domain name by the server to deploy to. Config EDN contains configuration for the application. Okay, I see. Nice and relatively simple. Def CDN by default defines a single dependency, com Biff web. Back to deps. This library's alias is Biff in most namespaces. Setup.sh is a script for provisioning an Ubuntu server. Wow. All right, there you go. Looks like you run it on the server. It doesn't actually create the instance.
Are you thinking of deploying it in this session? Or?
Probably not.
Okay. Yeah.
But just curious. It's pretty. Just gonna quit that file. Don't want to accidentally do anything. All right, code organization. All right, so sorry, I'll take a pause. Anybody have any thoughts or anything so far? Things that they've noticed? I say what I noticed, but I would love to hear what you guys noticed.
Looks okay.
Looks good.
Cool. All right, code organization. The example project is separated into 3 layers. Main namespace, feature namespaces, schema, shared namespaces. We'll start with the middle layer. A feature namespace contains the routes, static pages, scheduled tasks, and/or transaction listeners that pertain to a particular feature. Each namespace exposes these things via a features map. Let me see. So like the home feature, there's a features map right here. So it has a route / get home. Okay. Oh, for example, the feat home namespace contains a single route for the landing page. Has a sign up form. So this is the unauthenticated form, I guess. Where were we here? Oh, I see. So app is where you're logged in. Okay. The schema namespace defines the types of documents that are allowed to be written to the database. Whenever you submit a transaction, it'll be checked against your schema first. Here we define a user document type, which includes an email field and a couple other string fields. So tab, the schema namespace. So there's a user ID, a user email, a user foo. Always gotta have the foos, a user bar, and other string fields. Interesting. So this looks like a Mali schema. I've used Mali some. And it's interesting that there's like a similarity between the outside fields and in the fields here. The main namespace is the app's entry point. It bundles your schema and features together. For example, here we combine all the routes and apply some middleware. The main namespace. I'm guessing this is the main namespace. One def routes. Yeah, there it is right here. Interesting. So there's routes and API routes. Wonder what the difference is there. Maybe authenticated and unauthenticated or something like that.
Or maybe
Finally,
there's an API that you could access it with.
Yeah. I wonder
Like a
if
REST
that's the API like the application uses the API, or if it's like a third-party API, like it's the same.
Yeah, but it looks like it says map routes features and map API routes features. So features is the same thing in both.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
I'd imagine, given that it has the anti-forgery stuff on the routes, those are for like web pages, and then API routes is going to be for URLs that don't have the anti-forgery and don't have HTML rendering. So it'd be like a REST API.
Yeah.
Or, well,
Yeah,
a REST
makes
API
sense.
maybe given HTMX rendering little fragments, I suppose.
Jacob, hey Jeff, welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
Hello, Jacob.
Well, look
Hello,
who's
Jacob.
here.
Hey, Patrick.
Oh, we have another new member, Jeff here.
Yeah, hi.
Hello. we are going through the Biff documentation, and kind of just poking around and discussing it. So feel free to answer questions, as I'm sure you will. Well, so here's a question we just had. So there's routes and API routes, and we were wondering what the difference was between those two. Uh-oh, I think you're muted.
Sorry, I muted myself instead of unmuting. So basically the only difference is just the middleware shown on the screen right there. So API routes like don't have CSRF protection, for example. So like you can do a post request from, somewhere that doesn't have a CSRF token and it'll work. There are probably like other things that I should take out because like there's other middleware for things like setting up a session and things that probably should also be omitted from the API routes, and API routes is not even really a feature I am using myself at all at this point. But yeah, basically it's meant though for like if you want to expose like a API to like third parties.
And I assume that you would have to provide your own authentication or your own all that on that. Yeah, but it allows you to do that. You're okay.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Cool. All right, so that was the main namespace. Finally, shared namespace contains code that is needed by multiple feature namespaces. This example app has a single shared namespace, com.example.ui. Which contains helper functions for rendering HTML. It sure does. Where was the application? There it is. Oh, that's not it. There it is. So let's see. Reloading. I wonder if I reload the page over here. Hey, look at that. I don't know, it's kind of hard to see, but the title of the page changed over there. That's pretty cool. All right. Static files. You create static HTML files by supplying a map from paths to RUM data structures in com feature auth, which I think we have open. Oh, maybe we don't. We define two static pages, either of which is shown after you request a sign-in link. So sent, sign in, sent. And sign in fail. So this is the RUM you were talking about, Patrick, huh?
It is.
But
And
it does
Jacob,
look a lot like Hiccup. Go ahead.
I was just going to paraphrase the question, which I shouldn't do. Was there a question about the relationship between Htmx and RUM from before, or perhaps that's not something they want to ask now? But
that was kind of what this is Tom, Jacob. How you doing? Yeah, that was kind of what I asked. And actually, I'd expanded to the relationship between RUM, HTML, and Hiccup. HTMLX, excuse me.
Yeah, so like, so RUM is basically just an alternative to Hiccup. I originally started using it because like nice thing about RUM is it's the same on both the front end and the back end. Whereas like if you're using like reagent and Hiccup, there's a few differences. Like you can't like Hiccup, you can't put like just a hash map for the style attribute. You'd have to like use Garden or something. But RUM is nice because it's exactly the same. So you can do hash maps for style, inline styles and stuff. At this point, we only use it for server-side rendering, but it's still nice in general and has a couple little shortcuts. But it's mostly equivalent to Hiccup. And if you like wanted to use Hiccup instead, it wouldn't be too hard to just use that.
Was there some consideration with Hiccup? There was some kind of security issue around escaping strings or something like that. Was that one of your reasons, or is that not even a thing anymore?
That is the thing. Like there is, I think, a Hiccup version 2 that escapes strings by default. That wasn't like necessarily a huge part of the motivation, but I mean, it is another kind of nice thing about Rum. I guess they just escape things by default.
Gotcha. All right. I think the map values set, setup, sent, and sign and fail in this case are passed to the render static markup and written to the path you specify. If the path ends in a slash, then index HTML will be tacked onto the end of it. So these end up as actual files on the file system. Ah, there it is.
Yeah.
Resources public auth. Auth fail. Looks about right. And they will be served. Initial any files you put in resources public will be served. Gotcha. So resources public and target are or target resources are like both served out of. Routing uses ring and re. Do you know how to pronounce this, Jacob? Read.
From the README, I think it's pronounced like write it or something. In my head, I've always called it re-edit. I don't know. You have to ask someone from Atosin.
Well, I like write it. That's good. It uses ring and write it for handling HTTP requests. Write it has a lot of features, but you can go far with just a few basics. Multiple routes. This. I'm using that write it in my current project at work, and it's quite nice as a change. I previously have used Clojure, and I like the data-driven approach. Like it's very like you can specify a lot and then combine them together and that kind of stuff. So I see that Biff does a lot of the same things. Has anyone else used write it? Is everyone just using Clojure or raw ring? You know, the cond.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have used it in the previous version of Biff, and I liked it really.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Path parameters. So like this, the colon token here ends up as a path params. There you go. Nested routes. So like auth/send, auth/verify/token. With middleware, there's wrapped assigned in. So good old middleware where you define a function that hands back a function. And then your mind bends in half. If you have to provide a public API, oh, there you go. You can use the API route to disable CSRF. This is a Biff feature, not a rate it with. So there's the API routes one. Biff includes some middleware, wrap render rum, which will treat vector responses as rum. The following handlers are equivalent. Oh, very cool. Okay, yeah, I think I saw that over here in the core namespace. Wrap render rum. Yeah, it's cool that you can just, by the type of the return, you could differentiate how it's handled. So it allows you to upgrade whenever you need to instead of having to specify something else. All right, schema XTDB, the database Biff uses, does not enforce schema on its own. Biff provides a schema enforcement with Mali. here's a Mali crash course. We say what we want to save a user document like this. So it's got an XTDB, user email, user favorite color, user age. In our Mali schema, we first define schemas on each of the user document's attributes. So let me see, I had schema open over here. For each schema map value, Mali has a handful of type schemas like UUID and string above, and it also supports predicate schemas like number with a question mark. Once our attributes have been defined, we combine them into a schema for the user document itself. In English, this all means user is a map. It's a closed map, meaning is not allowed to have any keys that aren't defined. User email is required. Favorite color and user age are optional because of this optional true here. XTID has the same schema as user ID, which happens to be UID. XT. Oh, interesting. I'm wondering, so there seems to be like there's two levels to this. User email. What's kind of I'm wondering what the motivation is to have two
This is
levels.
kind of the same as
like,
spec, because when you have a keys spec, you specify what the fields are, and by default, those are specs that have predicates. So this is essentially saying user email is the field in the map, and user email is a string. So you have the definition of what each of those fields are in terms of predicates. And so for XTID, it's saying, well, it's the same as user ID, and user ID is specified to be a UUID. So have you used spec much?
Personally, no, I haven't.
Okay. So you'll find this is pretty much the same as spec. You specify how the attributes all behave, and then you specify the aggregates of those attributes. Yeah.
Oh, I see. So that's what the user here is an aggregate of all those together. So like you don't have to say that user foo is a string because user foo is a string up here.
Yeah.
This means that it's a string because it's. Oh, I see.
Yeah, and you can give it different names. So the user has an XTID, and its quote type, its schema is user ID, which is UUID. And then message ID is in the next one. So message XTID is the thing that's going to be in the map, and its schema is message ID. So it again is a UUID, but it's separate. So you get the abstraction from the names and the values types that they can have.
And so you can share them or define them differently if they need to be. Okay.
And in this case, the reason it's different is because in most cases you'd have like an attribute like user email is kind of its own independent thing, right? And so the way, since we're defining it separately, it's like a user email is a string, like anywhere you use it. You could theoretically have like other documents that include a user email. XTID is different because in XT, every document is going to have an XTID, but we don't necessarily want them all to have the same type because a user has its own XTID. And so because of that constraint, like they all have to have the same name for the attribute. That's why for that one attribute, we do it different and specify that, okay, that's because all the other ones in the map, like for user email, user foo, we don't say what type it is in the map. Like the XTID is the only one where we include the type information right there. And that's why, so we can have like different types for the same attribute on different documents.
Or like, so you could have, if you wanted to have the user email, you could have user email down here. Oops. And it has the right, it's a string type. So the user email is its own type. You don't have to redefine its type again and again because you want user email to always mean that across all of your schemas.
Correct.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think I was a little tripped up in the white space here. It made it felt like this was a map and this was a map, but it's not. This is like this whole thing here is a map, and so you could like, it's like these are Those are the individual field schemas, and this is like the composite ones. Interesting, very interesting. So this design is modeled off of spec, like that's where this was pulled from, or
I mean,
or is it just?
I mean, you have to ask Matosin, but I'm sure I'm sure they've taken a lot of design stuff from spec. But yeah, the way it works to spec in parts of that is quite similar. Its biggest difference is Mali it's all data driven, whereas spec uses functions and macros.
Cool, very, very cool. Cool. I was not aware, because I've done schemas, but I've not done them this way. It like makes a registry. I've just done independent schemas, and they don't tend to share any fields. So I haven't done this like where you can define the type of the field and then you composite it together. So that's a very cool. I didn't know that was built into. Oh, that was a schema choice, that or a Mali choice, but that makes sense. It's Mali. Okay, cool. Thank you for explaining that. Let me see. Note about XTDB, every other attribute. Oh, this is probably what you just said. Outside of the schema, user email is defined globally to be a string. However, every document must have an XTID attribute, and different types of documents may need different schemas for XTID. So we define the schema for XTID locally within the document. Very cool. All right. Does anybody else have any questions about that? I was very confused. Clear as cool. Transactions. Biff uses XTDB for the database. It's okay if you haven't used XTDB before, but you may want to peruse some of the learning resources at least. I'm going to resist clicking on that because we spent 4 meetups, I think, doing it. So we're experts, right? We've done all the tutorials. Just kidding. The request map passed to HTTP handlers and the schedule task and transaction listeners includes a Biff XTDB node key, which can be used to submit transactions. Oh, cool. Biff also provides a higher level wrapper over XTDB API submit TX. This lets you specify document types from your schema. And if the document you're trying to write doesn't match its respective schema, the transaction will fail. In addition, Biff will call await TX on results so you can read your writes. So let's see here, Biff submit TX. And you give it the node and the Mali ops. DB doc type message. So message is what it would match against in the schema.
One thing that may be good to do before you end this meetup is to demonstrate the feature with 2 browser windows open, where there's the chat feature enabled. So the thing you already opened, you can just open a new window and log in again. And then this last entry here then appends those to respective, as you'll see, respective windows.
You'd want to open it as like in like an incognito window too, so it's not signed into the same account.
What did I say, Nate? At somewhere.
And you'd want to do as a different address, actually.
It's
a different one. Yeah, so it's like 2 different users. Otherwise, you'll just see the same thing basically.
And then you'll get another link in the console. Yeah. There. You may need to reload that window.
I wonder if that one got disconnected somehow.
There it is.
There you go. Very cool. All right, I'm gonna minimize that.
And that gives context to some of the documentation that you're getting into.
Oh, cool. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So send message is Biff submit TX. I wonder where we can look at, just look at this in here.
If you go to app.cloj, yeah, that one. Not all of the examples in the docs are taken straight from the code base, but this one in particular is pretty much the same, slightly different.
So there's MSG, and where was the schema? Oh, it was right next to it. MSG here. So send message is called. Where's send message called from? WebSocket. Oh, cool. So there's a WebSocket connection between the web browser and the backend.
So this is one of the HTMX features, because so HTMX sets up the WebSocket for you, and so then when you like just do a regular form submit, then HTMX will take the form values and put it in a JSON payload, and so then that payload is what's getting sent to the handler up above.
Is that for all form submissions? Can you differentiate like form from something else, or that's like the way its main engine of doing things?
It's you can specify it per form. So like if you scroll up a bit, you can see the bit where it, let's see, keep going up, right here. So in this chat function thing, so yeah, it's right there, HXWS. So within that context, we're connected to a WebSocket, right? And so then, yeah, so right below there on the form where it says HXWS send, so that means anytime this particular form is submitted, then the contents will be sent using the WebSocket connection.
Very cool. Messages. Oh, there's a XTDB query. So this is where the look back 10 minutes is implemented. It's like, cool. Is this called from? Okay, yeah, it's in the bottom of this page. Cool. So you're able to separate out your different page components. They're just functions to call. Bar form. Okay, so it said I didn't do this before. This demonstrates updating a value with a plain old form. So that's action Biff form.
The Biff form is just, it's a light helper function. It sets the method to post, but it also throws in a CSRF token.
Ah, cool. So that reloaded the web page. Looks like, yeah. This demonstrates updating a value with Htmx. Ah, no web page refresh. Very cool. So let's see, what's the bar form look like? HX post instead of action. It's been a while since I've actually done web forms. Action is like what it's going to post to, right?
Yeah, it's the endpoint.
Yeah. Let's see, where's bar form? And so HX post. So it does the same, or I mean similar thing, but it's doing it the HX thing. Can we look at the source code over here and see those HX attributes?
Yeah, they should be there.
Oh man. Let me try this one instead. There you go. HX post set bar. Oh, interesting.
Looks like there's, looks like I've made a little bug there. So HTMX is supposed to replace the entire form, but it looks like I have it only replacing the contents of the form. So if, in fact, while you have this open, if you were to hit that update button on the bar form again, you'd probably see another form get nested inside. Yeah. So what we want to do is we want here, why don't you on bar form in the attribute map, so right after HX post, you want to add another key and value and have it be HX-swap. And then the value will be a string and it'll be outer HTML with HTML all uppercase.
That?
Yep, that should do it. So try refresh the page and then let's make sure that doesn't do the nesting thing again.
Yeah, looks like that worked. Where'd it go? Oh, it's right there. I'll select something different. Nice. So outer HTML is like, I mean, that's like, that strikes me as from the olden days of raw JavaScript stuff. Is that where it comes from? Yeah, it's a standard thing. I think it's like a standard browser API, not necessarily an HTMX thing. Not 100% sure. Yeah. There are some other values, like you can do outer HTML, inner HTML, but also like before end, after end. I think the messages do the same thing. So like when you hit the send message button, it will insert the message using like a, oh yeah, right there, see after begin. So that's how it knows to like put the message at the top of the chat thing. Oh, interesting, cool. What's oob? Out of band. And that's because, so normally like with, so now this is a little different too, because this bit is a WebSocket thing, but so say with like bar form, typically like the Htmx response is just replacing the thing that generated the request. So you got the bar form, you submit that form, and then you get some HTML back and you replace that form with HTML, right? But if you wanted to like change some other piece of the UI at a different location, like, I don't know, maybe update like a little notification thing at the top, say you have a new message or something, you could do an out of band swap, which is you specify the ID of the document that you want to, or the ID of the element that you want to swap into,
And then it'll swap it into wherever that happens to be. So yeah, so right here, we're setting the ID as messages. So that's how it'll know to like put it into the chat window. And so WebSockets, we have to do out of band because they're not initiated by a request necessarily. So we don't have like a default place to put it. So out of band is like the only way.
And so when you submit a message, does it update this down here? I mean, it updates that the area down there for other clients, but does it also update for the current client via the WebSocket too?
Yeah, it all goes through the
just the same?
WebSockets.
Yeah.
Yep.
That way it's consistent. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. That's definitely, yeah, interesting. Well, here, let's see. Look, it's responsive. We were talking earlier before you got here, Jacob, about Tailwind and its responsiveness. Yeah.
It's much easier than writing mobile apps.
I had brought up inelegantly that I was excited to go dive into Tailwind. Someone had asked about it, and personally, I was excited to find all these templates out there, which is probably not the cool way to do it, but they are like totally responsive. You can just copy and paste headers that collapse if it's the mobile width and everything. So I know that I'm not going to want to, be learning all about everything about CSS. So to me, that's very relieving.
Yeah. So that's a big part of how they make money, actually. So there's a Tailwind UI project where they have like a whole bunch of just fancy UI stuff already coded up with Tailwind. And like a few of them, they have like all the stuff you can copy and paste, but others, they just show you like a PNG of it. And then if you pay, then you can get access to everything and use it in your projects and stuff.
I also found quite a few non-paid component libraries for Tailwind as well, where you can just grab things that are from other parties than Tailwind and drop them into your project.
All right. Let's keep going then. Okay. So we talked about submit TX and await TX. If you don't set an XTID, Biff will use random UID as the default. The default operation is XTAPI put. Cool. Delete the document by setting opt delete. Delete message. As a convenience, any occurrences of DB now are replaced with Java util date. Oh, nifty. Strikes me as something that happens in Datomic, I think, right?
I don't remember actually. I know it happens in Firebase, which is where I've stolen it from. But
there you go. If you set DB opt update or DB opt merge, the document will be merged with the existing document if it exists. The difference is that DB opt update will cause the transaction to fail if the document doesn't already exist. Oh, very cool. Is that using match behind the scenes to
yeah, it's
function to merge?
It uses match. And then if it
if I kept reading, there you go. It uses match operations to ensure that concurrent merge update operations don't get overwritten. Retry. Oh, that's cool. When DB opposite to merge or update, you can use special operations on a per attribute basis. These operations can use the attribute's previous value along with new values you provide to determine what the final value will be. Oh, interesting. That's like I've used MongoDB a lot. There's a lot of operator functions in there. Is that the same with Firebase?
Yeah, a lot of these are taken from Firebase.
Gotcha. Post tags, union, difference, add. only to set these default set a value only if the existing document doesn't already contain the attribute. Oh, interesting. Dissociate to remove an attribute. You can use DB lookup to enforce unique constraint on attributes other than XTID. Oh, very cool. So this will use a separate lookup document that if the user has already been created, it will look like this, where that's a document ID. If the document doesn't exist, the ID will be a random EUID unless you pass in a different EUID with DB lookup. Oh, up here.
So it's kind of a XT idiom because the only kind of uniqueness constraints that XT does is on the XTID attribute, right? So one of the workarounds you can do is you just have a totally separate document. Like in this case, the XTID value is including the user email for this thing. So you get the uniqueness that way, and then you just say, okay, and this email belongs to this other document.
You use the actual, the thing you want to be unique as the ID of a different document, and then
yeah. The other way would be to just do transaction functions. One of the reasons I went with matches for Biff is it just makes it easy because you don't have to like make sure you've got a function stored in XT already. We can just do it completely in the library code, which is kind of nice.
Mm-hmm. I've never done. We didn't do any transaction functions. I don't think we did it when we did the XT or the Crux walkthroughs. So I'm not very familiar with the overhead of doing
we did it.
Yeah.
I've never used them
in
myself, I don't think, actually.
Oh.
I've used them in Htmx, just not in XT.
Cool. If you need to do something that Biff submit TX doesn't support, like setting a custom valid time or using transaction functions, you can always just use XT submit TX. Oh, here's what the entire transaction looks like under the hood when you're doing an update. Interesting. All right, on to queries. As mentioned last section, Biff uses XTDB for the database, provides a couple of query convenience functions. Biff Web Queue is a very light wrapper around XTDB API queue. First, we'll throw an exception if you pass an incorrect number of arguments to in. Ah, that's nice. If you omit a vector around the find value, the results will be scalars instead of tuples. Oh, nifty.
You can tell what things I've found to be annoying in my own usage of XT based on this.
Yes.
I have like the number of arguments I have ran into that are a very large number of times.
I do remember a lot of map firsts when we were doing our XTDB explorations before. All right, lookup is a bit like entity, except you pass an arbitrary key value pair instead of a document ID. Oh, nifty. So it's like lookup by attribute, essentially. Lookup ID, which returns the document ID instead of the entire document. It says a lot about what you ran into that was annoying, but it also says a lot about what is already there in XTDB, like that you didn't have to do a whole lot. There's like these are convenience functions that you probably ran into a lot, but you didn't have to do or maybe there's a big Biff Web XTDB library coming.
No, nothing huge coming. That is nice. I would have liked to put more documentation in that section just for anyone who like isn't already familiar with doing queries, just kind of like we did like with Mali or Write It, right? I had kind of a little crash course thing. But I already had worked on the documentation for quite a long time. So I said, yep, I'm just going to put these helper things and move on and maybe do that later. But yeah, as far as queries, like I haven't had any need to like really put too much on top of them, as opposed to like transactions where we do have a pretty large layer on top of it.
The transaction listeners?
No, the transaction that we just went through where it talks about like all the extra things that Biff supports for transactions.
Oh, right. Gotcha. That one, gotcha. Htmx allows us to create interactive user interfaces without JavaScript or Clojure script. Works by returning snippets of HTML from the server in response to user actions. For example, the following code will cause the button to be replaced with some text after it is clicked. Oh, there's the outer HTML right there. So you click the button and it replaces the form. You use it by setting HX attributes on your elements. Yeah, we've seen that now. Good. You can also use it to establish WebSocket connections. This update here, does this use the WebSocket, or this just uses a standalone request?
Yeah, that just is a standalone request, and just the chat messages below use WebSockets.
Gotcha. Oh, right. Yeah, I remember seeing over here in the handler only has send message in the like when it receives something. So if it wanted to do more, it had to do more over there. Note this chat room will only work if all the participants are connected to the same server. For that reason, it's better to call Jetty send from a transaction listener. See the next section. You can also use Htmx's companion library, Hyperscript, to do lightweight front-end scripting. Htmx is good when you need to contact the server anyway. Hyperscript is good when you don't. A previous button example could have gone with like this. Oh, is that what this is? The underscore? Is that Hyperscript?
Yep.
On click, put tisk 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 into the message, then remove me. Don't click this button. Then remove me.
Yeah.
So it's like a DSL. Like
yeah, it's really interesting. It apparently was inspired by Apple HyperCard, I think, which I have zero experience with myself, but I guess it's one of those, another thing kind of like this that looks like natural language a bit, right? But yeah, so me is an alias for the current element. So when in that example, like you click the button will disappear and then put the text into that div right above it.
Interesting. Have you found, because like you use this for the sample, right?
Yeah.
Have you found that there's places like is Hyperscript enough, or are you frustrated with it? Like what's your
so far it's been quite nice actually. Like I mean I haven't done anything like super fancy, but it's enough to like do like a hamburger, like one of those navigation menus where you have, in fact the Biff website uses it. Like here, why don't you open a new tab and go to biffweb.com. So up top we got the nav window, but then if you shrink the window horizontally, it'll switch to a little hamburger thing like you'd see on mobile. Yeah. And so that's done with Hyperscript, for example. So that's nice. And then there's also in in the sample, there's a particular UI where we've got like a drop down combo box. And then depending on like which one of the options you select, it'll show like a different piece of the UI. It's for like doing an integration with a mail service provider. So you say, do you want to integrate with like MailChimp or Review or whatever other one? And so depending on which one you select, it'll show like a different instructions and form for like putting in your API keys and stuff. But it's like one line of Hyperscript to say like, you know, okay, take the current value of this combo box and then go through this list of divs and show only the one that matches the value that you have. And I was like, oh, that's pretty nice. So far I haven't like ran into like any situations where it's felt limiting or that I've had to like do very much with normal JavaScript. I also like haven't done too many complex UI things. I generally just try to keep my UIs extremely simple. This whole app too is like, it's a very straightforward app. Like most of the interesting stuff is kind of in a machine learning pipeline on the back end anyway. So we haven't needed to do like anything super fancy in terms of UI.
Interesting. Very cool. Very cool. It's always interesting to run across things like this where it's like it's a whole, like, you know, it's a whole thing, you know, that you haven't never even heard of, and that's very useful and seems like a really good, like, you know, because I assume that you can just put JavaScript in there if you want, because it's just a web page.
Yeah, totally.
If you wanted to go, you know, vanilla JavaScript on it or whatever. Cool, very cool. All right. Transaction listeners. XTDB maintains an immutable transaction log. You can register a listener function, which will get called whenever a new transaction has been appended to the log. If you provide a function for the onTX feature key, Biff will register it for you and pass new transaction to it. For example, here's a transaction listener that prints a message whenever there's a new user. Very cool. So let's see, under feature.
Yeah, in the worker.cloj file. If you wanted to demonstrate this a bit more, you could right before the do seek maybe put a print out that tx value. Yeah, you might want to do a pretty print. So Biff has an alias for pretty print. So if you just do like call Biff/pprint, and then you can pass tx to it.
Oops, let's spell it right.
Okay, so now if you, oh wait, was there a
there was a compiler error because I was
was that from when it was okay, but is it
spelled.
Did it reevaluate? I wonder, I don't see another, maybe save the file again. Okay, there, looks like it worked this time. Okay, so yeah, so now if you, so that'll print like any transaction that comes through, because like it's only after in the do seek that we filter for new users. So if you went to the regular thing and like just updated one of the form values, we'll see something print out.
Oh. It took me all the way till now to realize what foo and bar were. So every user has their own foo and bar.
Yep. Yeah, and those are back in the schema file too.
Cool. And then so they're doing the match. So you're using update then.
Yeah. Yes.
So let's see, when enable worker, let DB before. I love this. I've been using a little bit of XTDB like for a side project so I've spent like 10 minutes on it, but I love that you can say like decrement the transaction ID and you get the previous state of the database. Like it's a monotonic, like it's not like I got to figure out what the last timestamp was, you know. No, it's just a number, you can decrement it. I think that's very cool. So when there's a put and it contains an email. Whoa, is that a user?
It's always exciting when you're launching a new app, right? You like set it up so you get an email every time, like, haha.
Yeah, or a Slack message that sends an SMS. It does, you know, sets out the fireworks.
I actually set this up, Jacob, with SenderMail. Is that the company that is?
MailerSend.
MailerSend, yeah. And, they initially declined to create an account for me after looking at the landing page I supplied them, which was the default landing page for Biff. It somehow wasn't convincing to them, and
Wasn't
I like
impressive enough.
Yeah, along with my domain name, which was absurd, and for learning purposes. So I emailed them back, and they created an account for me, and then it worked fine. It worked great. I get little emails now when I set up chats with myself on your framework. I now get emails from my different selves. So, yeah.
Maybe I should tell them like, hey, by the way, I mentioned you in my documentation, because they're somewhat. I mean, I think they've been operating for like a year or two, but haven't been around super long. Mailgun is the older one, and what I've been using with the sample, but I came across MailerSend on Hacker News a few months ago, and it looks a little bit nicer and it's cheaper. It's like half the price of Mailgun, which for like small things isn't really going to matter, but I'm paying Mailgun like over $200 a month now, and so I mean, at the end of the day, it's not like a huge deal, but
yeah, they have
just defaulting to MailerSend.
Yeah. They have a free account for our purposes. They let me know I can only, you know, I'm limited to 1,000 emails a day or something.
I think if or is that like until you upgrade to the like $35 a month tier?
Yeah,
or is
it was
like
the free, I don't know, 100 emails, far more than I would ever need, you know, for my learning purposes. But it was free, which was great, and it worked. I just had to put the key in there.
I'd have to check. I think it might be like if you put in a credit card, then maybe the thing goes up. Because I know on Mailgun, at least, like it's just a kind of a usage based thing. So it's just like 80 cents for 1,000 emails. So if you do go over like the small free tier, like you wouldn't immediately have to pay like $35 a month. I don't remember if it's the same on MailerSend or not.
Well, what's this? Defincy?
That's from a separate library called BetterCond.
Ah, okay. I've heard of it, never used it though.
Yeah, it's basically not like it lets you do early returns is one way to describe it, which is kind of nice for some of these kind of thing where like if like here we're checking for like an error condition, right? And then if it is an error, then you can just exit right there, and instead of having like a bunch of nested like if expressions and stuff. It's also kind of nice too sometimes for like handler, like HTTP handlers where you want to validate some fields, and if something's invalid, you can like return an error page right away. And then if it's true, if it's good, then you can go on and render the normal page.
Cool. Yeah, I was looking for where it said, where it was like basically saying there was no API key. And so the click goes, very cool idea of putting the default is just like prints to the log, because that's super useful for early. In the past, I've had to now I have to set up the emailing stuff just to get my authentication stuff working. And this is like a wonderful default. I must say.
How'd you like it?
Let's see. All right, scheduled tasks. We're running short on time here. Biff uses Chime to execute functions on a recurring schedule. For each task, you must provide a function to run a schedule function, which will return a list of times which to execute that task function. The schedule can be an infinite sequence. For example, here's a test that prints out the number of users every 60 seconds. That was the worker, right? Yeah. Okay, so schedule is every minute, and here's the interesting. Cool. Authentication is entirely kept within the feature auth. Biff uses email sign-on links to set up passwords. When you create a new project, the secret token is generated and stored in config EDN under the JWT secret key. When a user wants to authenticate, they enter their email address, and then your secret token is used to sign a JWT, which is embedded in a link and then sent to the user's email address. When they click on the link, their ID is added to the session cookies. By default, the link is valid for 1 hour and a session lasts for 60 days. Cool. So the session is just in the request. So you got a middleware stuff set in there.
After that, it's just the standard ring session middleware.
Gotcha. Cool. Oh, and here's what we were just talking about, mailer send. So it'll be printed to the console. Some applications that use email sign-on links are vulnerable to login CSRF. Where an attacker requests a sign-in link for their own account and then sends it to the victim. If the victim clicks the link that doesn't notice they've signed into someone else's account, they might reveal private information. Yes.
I'll be back in a couple minutes.
Cool. Biff prevents login CSRF by checking the link is clicked on the same device it was requested from. Good. It is likely you need to protect your sign-in from against bots. Template project includes backend code for reCAPTCHA, which does invisible bot detection. No, wow, no need to click on pictures instead of cars. Instead, they analyze your mouse movements. Huh. See this page for instructions on adding the necessary code to the front end. And you just had the reCAPTCHA key. Wow. That is, I've never heard of that before. Your mouse motions. I guess humans have random, they have mouse motions, I guess, instead of robots that don't. System composition, all the pieces of Biff project are combined using the start system function. Function takes a system map and then passes it through a list of component functions. For example, here we start a very simple app that includes Jetty. Here's Jetty. Oh, and it's handed the system. So it can just associate. Oh, so the system is just a map then, huh? Well, that's very nice. Where was the REPL namespace? Let's see if this would return. Something's up with my REPL. It's not working with the Biff and REPL.
So I use this. This is Clojure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a Vim mapping that just does connect to like Clojure connect 7888, and whenever I have issues like this, I just mash the thing until it works, and usually that fixes it. You could try that though, like just do Clojure connect 7888, and that maybe that'll fix it.
Yeah, I'm not able to evaluate anything. It's like not even like something that should be really easy.
It's really weird.
Yeah.
If nothing else, you can always just restart the Clojure process, I guess.
I'll figure that out later. System app will be stored in com Biff web. This is why I wanted to run it, was because I wanted to see what the map looked like.
There is a very easy workaround you can use. If you just move that sort expression out of the comment block and just save the file, then Biff, the file watcher, will evaluate it and it'll print out.
Hey.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, sort keys there. That's why I was like, I was expecting a map. Oops. Is this going to be a bad idea?
Well, it'll leak your secrets. So as long as you don't deploy this anywhere, it'll be fine.
This secret right here, the one that
Yeah.
I'm
So
highlighting.
the JW, yes, those ones. Whatever you do, don't let anyone see those.
But cool to see all the stuff is there on TX. Good grief. So much from such a little bit of code. System uses flat namespace keys rather than nested maps. For example, after starting up a new project, there are a few of the keys that the map will include. Config, handler. Oh, the handler. Chat clients, topology. Or is that XTDB topology? I guess I should go back to the
It's at the top, right at the top.
topology. XTDB topology. Cool. Several of the component functions pass the system map to their children. For example, Biff includes the middleware that merges the system map with a request map for all incoming requests. Use Chime will similarly pack the system map to schedule task functions. Application code should not touch the system directly, instead take it as a parameter. Good. If you want to modify some code that runs at startup, you can call Biff web refresh. This will call all the functions stored in stop, reload all the code, after which start will be called with the new code. Oh, cool. So this is the reloaded framework, or reloaded workflow, essentially.
Yeah.
However, you shouldn't need to call refresh regularly. Wherever possible, Biff uses late binding so the code can be updated without restarting the system. Oh, passing it as a var, yes. Review define handler, and the new handler will be used, yes. Is this actually the source code for?
Yep, that's copied and pasted.
system?
That's it.
Love it. Very cool. Taking Biff apart. As your application grows, you inevitably need more and or different behavior what Biff gives you out of the box. You can modify any part of Biff by supplying a different list of component functions to start system. You can add or remove components, and you can modify existing components by copying their source into your project. For example, if you want to read in your configuration differently, you can change this to this. So there's the use config is the component, the function.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
And yeah, there you go. And config.
So those are both just copied. So like the workflow, what you do is you just go to the Biff source and those are copied verbatim. And then at that point now the source is in your own project. And so then you can do whatever changes you need to.
So like if you wanted to use Arrow or, one of the other configuration loading things, that you could just use that instead.
Yeah.
Cool. You could even replace start system with integrant or component. That's pretty cool. Swap out the engine. Biff comes with a production, a script, setup.sh for setting up an Ubuntu server. It has been tested on DigitalOcean. Of course, you can deploy diff anywhere you can run JVM, but if you're happy with the defaults, then you can simply follow these 3 steps. We looked at this a little bit before. I will leave that as an exercise to the listener. Oh, that's the end of the page. Very cool. Okay, I have to ask, do you use edit in or deploy or develop in production for the sample?
I do every day. I
Wow.
very rarely load a JVM on my local machine anymore. In fact, if you want, I can do it right now. You can see something. Let me load. Okay, let's see. Let's see what's some here. Do you want to? Yeah. What's something inconspicuous we could change?
Something down here at the bottom, like.
Yeah, sure.
I'm opening the sample on my, no cheating, because I'm going to be opening it on my machine here too. So.
Okay, let's see. Okay, reload the landing page. There should be a little thing right. Now I can't see it because all the thumbnail videos from Zoom are in the way, but okay, there, if I minimize there. Yep, there it is.
There we go. Like this. Make it. There it is. Hi, Nate. Hi, Jacob. I can't edit it, so you'll have to.
It's the canary. When that goes away, something's gone horribly wrong in Jacob's life.
It's gone. Nothing's horribly wrong. It's gone though so far. But yeah, I do break things sometimes, but it has been, I'd say, a very large productivity boost.
That's very cool.
It's a little bit, the setup for the sample is a little bit more complicated because I have, it's separated into a web server and a worker, which is why I have that stuff kind of in Biff, so that if you need to, then you can separate it easily. It's still fairly straightforward though. Like so for the sample, I've modified the task script so that each command takes right before it the word either web or worker, and then it'll run. So if I do like t web prod dev, then I'll connect to the web server, and if I do t worker prod dev, I'll connect to the worker.
Gotcha. Very cool. So you're running, it's two separate processes, and do they share the same XTDB?
Yeah, so they're on two separate machines or like virtual machines on DigitalOcean, and then yeah, they're using the same XTDB instance. So like I've got a managed Postgres instance from DigitalOcean, which is backing XT, And then of course, like each of the machines has their own XT node, which reads from the Postgres instance. And so for example, like with the like transaction listeners or Chime or something, like they'll basically communicate over XT that way. So like for like when I get a new user, for example, like on the web server, we'll create the user and send it to XT, but then the worker has a transaction listener that will check for new users. And whenever there's like a new one, then we'll like prepare the first email to send them with a newsletter recommendation and then send that immediately.
Nice. That's cool. That's very cool to use XTD, that use the transaction log as a way of like as a data bus for your application.
It's nice. It's
Yeah.
very convenient to like limit the number of moving pieces. So like, you know, you set up XT and then like you can go fairly far with it, and hopefully far enough that you can hit product market fit, and then you'll start growing, and then you can decide if you want to like throw it all out or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Have you because I've never run XTDB in production, so like I have experience like what happens with Mongo when it goes sideways, or Postgres when it goes sideways, like how to recover it, or MySQL. Have you had any problems where you've had to like go and recover or anything like that, and it was XTDB's fault and you had to like and do any sort of like command line fixing, or has it been pretty stable for you?
It's been pretty stable. I'm trying to think of something. I know we've had like I've had kind of a issue with getting it like a new instance to index the transaction log. Like for some, like I have an issue open with this too that is still kind of sitting there. I need to go back to it, but for some reason, like when on my transaction log, when I spin up a new instance, it just like kind of freezes, and if I restart it several times, it'll like finally finish indexing it, and we haven't like got to the bottom of why exactly it's doing that. So if I were to spin up another web server or something, I would just like copy over the index from one of the other machines and then start from that.
Oh,
but
that's
so
cool.
That's kind of a weird thing, and I don't know why that happens, but like in general, like it just goes, and it's been pretty reliable.
Cool, thank you. It's always interesting to hear how when it's in real use. So cool. All right, we've now run over the end time. Not the end time, but sorry, the end of the meetup.
It was,
yeah.
Thank you, Nate. That was very great, and it's really great that we were able to go through the whole thing in a given time. So that was good, and we learned a lot of new libraries and such that I hadn't heard of. So that was good too.
Yeah, I definitely recommend. I had my doubts about Htmx, and then I started looking through the documentation for that project, and it was pretty convincing. It's a compelling project. The more I looked at it, the more it seems to make sense, and it's faster than I thought it would be. So it's very fast for the things that are commonly needed and on web pages. And yet, because for me, it is compelling that the server side aspect of it is compelling in terms of a simple way to collect data about what your users are doing and so forth. Anyway.
I think it's funded by JetBrains too now. So he's got a lot of sponsorship support, which is nice. Like it's just some random dude in Idaho, I think, working on it.
Colorado.
Montana, Colorado. Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
Somewhere in the Midwest.
His slogan on I found on his website was it says like we look for the I'm paraphrasing, but we look for the most exciting trends in software development and do the exact opposite. Something basically. And what he's speaking to is just like the whole React thing, which has gotten so unbelievably complex, and life cycles and all that. You know.
I've watched React. I was using React from JavaScript a while ago with the Clojure backend, and at that job we rewrote it into using Clojure script and basically just reagent, not even reframe. And I'm a big proponent of like the best way to use React is through reagent, because it's the same interface. Like so there was a video posted a while ago on Twitter, and it was like, here's all the different iterations of the React API, and then the same reagent interface to that is the same through the whole time. And so yeah, it's amazing how much change there's been in that. I think it's really interesting, the Htmx, like it might be a limiting factor, but like you said, it's kind of good to limit the technology until you get to the product market fit, and then you can go farther. So it might be a benefit, not a hindrance.
And also, I think that it will be possible, just like many things that were mentioned here, to add in React-like aspects to your website in addition to what's already there down the road. In other words, Htmx does not preclude the addition of other things later, and you could probably maintain some of the simplicity of Htmx for large parts of your project. But
yeah, that I've done that too in kind of a side project. Like you can just take like a drop-in JS component. So like it was for like a little personal CMS for like writing blog posts and stuff. I wanted like a markdown editor, and so there's some like, you know, you can get just like a drop-in JavaScript markdown component thing, and it just operates on the DOM, right? So like you write markdown, but then it's just putting the value right into like a DOM, so it just looks like a regular text input. So you can stick it in an Htmx form, and so you can still have like interactive stuff, but it's kind of cordoned off into these like separate standalone JavaScript components, which are hopefully written by people who are not you, or I mean, even if they are written by you, at least it's just like a very small self-contained thing. I think probably the point at which you'd want to like completely switch over to like React or something would be like if you really need React to be in charge of like the whole application state, instead of just like individual UI components. But if you need it to like understand your business domain and logic and stuff and be in control of it, then you'd want to like whip out Htmx probably. But I don't know. So far, I think you can probably go pretty far with just Htmx. I gotta get going, but it's been great, and hope you all have lots of success. And any stuff you run into, be sure to just drop it on like the Biff channel or open an issue on the repo too. And definitely looking for what is the most valuable way for me to work on Biff now going forward to help people out. So,
thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate it.
yeah, thanks for doing the meetup. I had no idea it was here. And Patrick emailed me, was like, hey, do you know there's a Biff meetup going? I was like, no way.
did you just do a video on, you just released a video, I think, on that goes into the deployment story and all that?
Yeah, I did that over the weekend. And then I was planning to probably this weekend do another one that goes more into like actually development and stuff.
And where's the best way to find those? Or where's the
just the Biff website. Go to the newsletter tab.
Okay. Oh, the newsletter tab. There we go.
Yeah, I'll probably change that to say blog.
Okay.
Same thing, basically. All right. See you all later.
Cool.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Any last thoughts before we sign off for April?
Just thank you for hosting this, and it's perfect timing for me. I was literally playing around with Biff, and I heard through the grapevine that this was going on. It had already started. So I was very grateful, and I'm very glad that you had it, and thank you so much. And now I'm going to attend your future meetups, and I like the format a lot. So
Awesome. Yeah, we've been doing this for a while. We did a XTDB, and we did Mali, and then Reveal and Portal. We're just basically like touring through the Clojure ecosystem.
no, it's a great way to do it, actually. You know, just to go through it together.
And you're gonna put up a video on the YouTube channel of this recording.
Yes.
Yeah.
I promise it will be sooner. I just posted the last 2 months this afternoon, so I promise it will be sooner than the next meetup.
Perfect.
Hopefully by this week.
Thank you.
Especially because, yeah, it's relevant because
Yeah.
Biff did new version and all that stuff. So I understand. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
Yeah.
Nate,
Thanks for coming.
Thanks,
for
folks.
this.
That was great.
Yeah, definitely.
Bye-bye.
All right. See y'all next month.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.